Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to our friends who are out west. I'm Mike Weinberg, CEO of The New Sales Coach, and I'm the author of the best-selling and top-rated book, New Sales Simplified. I am thrilled to be leading this panel discussion today, and let me kick us off with a giant thank you. Thank you to American Equity Mortgage for sponsoring this event. American Equity Mortgage created this series that they're calling AEM Achieve, and they're doing this to bring value back to their real estate partners. And really the whole goal here is to provide you with tools and information to help you grow your business. If you find this session valuable and useful to you today, let me encourage you when we're done, head on over to American Equity's Facebook page or YouTube channel where you can check out previous episodes of this series. What a privilege. Excited to host this panel today. As advertised, I am joined by three world-class real estate sales gurus with me on this panel today, and they're true professionals and top producers, and they're here to share their thoughts, their insights, their perspectives, and best practices to help you. Also on the panel today is my good friend Miles Austin of fillthefunnel.com. Miles is a sales web tool expert, and he's kind of behind the scenes making sure this all works out well for us today, and he'll also be helping us with some audience questions when we get about halfway through the session. So if you've got questions for the panelists as we go on, feel free to make a note of those, and there's a place on your Google Hangout page where you can submit those, and we'll do our best to tackle those as we go. Our format today, man, this is really simple. No slides, no presentation, no one's trying to sell you anything. We're going to have straight conversation, hard talk, tackling real issues facing real estate folks every day. And let me stop talking here and actually turn it over to our panelists. Take a minute and tell us about yourself, and then we'll dive into our first question.
Okay, great. I'll go ahead and start. My name's Kristin Petersen, and I've been in real estate since 1991, aging myself a little bit. And I work in the Central Florida area, a little bit north of Orlando, but my career started there in Orlando for 20 years. And I started off as a new home salesperson. I was being paid $50 a day, and I was sitting in a cow pasture, and I thought I was going to starve to death. But basically, that cow pasture soon became 3,000 homes, and I went off into general real estate and segmented it for 10 years into finance, and ended up co-owning and managing, excuse me, a mortgage company. And then I went and got my appraisal certifications for the state of Florida. That has helped a lot. And now I just sell general real estate. So I'm happy to share the wealth. I wish I'd had this opportunity when I started in real estate, and I look forward to helping you.
Yeah, so I'll jump in. My name is Josh Parker. I'm in Trinity, Florida, which is on the Gulf Coast. I'm on the opposite side of the world from Kristin here in Florida. Think Tampa Bay, Clearwater area. I've specialized the last several years in distressed sales. Primarily, Florida was hit really hard with the boom ticking up and then again falling down. So as I came into the market in 2008, luck would have it that I came into a distressed area. So I focused primarily on short sales and foreclosures at that time, and we were very successful. Selling, about 180 homes was our height for about $18.5 million that year. And I have since shifted my business with many of the practices that Mike talks about in his new book, New Sales Simplified. And it's about prospecting and getting out there and doing retail sales. So our goal now is shifting into that marketplace and getting rid of the REO stuff. So we've had a lot of fun doing all of that, and I'm just happy to be able to be on this panel today and share some of my experiences and some of the things that we do to produce at a high level.
Hi, everybody. My name is John Farrell, and I'm in the great state of upstate New York. For you around the country, we're right at where the foot bends and the flat part of the southern tier of New York begins. I've been in real estate for 30 years, and I built my career one deal at a time, one friend at a time. I came out of the music business, and at middle age, I found a career change, and I called my good friend Tom, and he said, I said, can you get me into Tom, because where I am in Vestal is the home of IBM. I said, could you get me into IBM, Tom? He says, no, but go see my dad. He sells real estate. They hire anybody. So from that point on, 30 years ago, real estate has been good to me. I'm 66 years old, and I've never had a real job my whole life. I've been an entrepreneur since I was 8 years old. And America is still the greatest place to be, and real estate's the greatest business to be in.
Amen.
All right, what a setup there, John. I'm from New York originally, born in the city and then lived in the suburbs. So I love to hear you differentiate between the two states, the real
Great
state,
state of upstate New York,
and then the city. So I get that, and we could talk about who puts mustard on hamburgers or not in some other conversation. So, all right, let's dive in and get going. Let me start out with actually kind of a negative. When I kick off a new client or I begin leading a coaching session, very often the first thing I'll get into is I'll share some observations with my audience of what I see causing other salespeople to struggle, particularly when it comes to picking up new business. I want to ask all of you to answer this question individually. What do you think are maybe the 2 or 3 things that you see other agents do that cause them to underperform, particularly when it comes to either picking up new clients or acquiring new listings? What are those couple reasons? I'd like to hear kind of all your perspective, and then we'll kind of turn it around after that and see what we can do to get on the good side.
I'll jump in real quick. I mean, it just comes to mind very fast is analysis paralysis. I've seen and tried, I did a lot of training in the past, and I have found that newer agents especially want to know absolutely every single detail about a contract, addendums, where to find them. It's almost like they get stuck in this I can't do anything until I know it all phase.
Absolutely.
And I just suggest you go out there and work, because the only way you're really going to learn is by doing it.
Yeah, so that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, the fear of rejection and the paralysis that comes along with the analysis side, we do call it exactly that, analysis paralysis. We're always telling agents, get out of your own way, right? Just go out there and do it. If you don't know it, find someone who does and ask them to, accompany you or ask to shadow them. It's definitely always those 2 things. It's always going to be fear, and it's always going to be the analysis paralysis that I see.
I would also say that for new agents, the fear comes from the lack of knowing what to say. When I've talked to the new agents in the business, I always tell them, why do we get paid is the question. The answer is because we know what to say at any given stage. The first thing you have to do as a new agent or as an old agent, you have to gain your confidence of the buyers, sellers, and let them know that, give them the confidence that you're the trusted advisor that you have. So our credibility is our real product, not real estate.
Okay, so let me follow up.
John, the only way you can gain confidence, though, I believe, is to get out there and do it.
That's right.
And to meet people and start talking to them.
Competence breeds confidence.
That's right, absolutely. When I first got my license, they were like, hey, congratulations, you got your license, now go sell some homes. Well, to me, that was like almost a double entendre, right? It was a double-edged sword. I was like, okay, I'm just going to go figure this out. But the side of that was that I had no confidence, and I just had to go and figure it out. With things like this, where we have mentors or classes like this available, it's just amazing that people take that and go run with it and learn it, and that's where you get your confidence, right? Pick up a book like New Sales Simplified, read a little bit about prospecting, get with somebody, do some scripts practice, do some role playing, figure out what that looks like. Objection handling is where I think, where most of the people get hung up is they forget that, okay, well, that's a real person. They're going to have a real objection. So it's just practice, get out there and do it. And if you were to go and do it in a closed room with 3 or 4 of your friends who are also new realtors, the chances of you being better at it when you get out there in the field with the client are leaps and bounds greater, right? Michael Jordan didn't practice that game-winning 3-point shot in the big game. He had practiced it 1,500 times in a gym at 4 a.m. when nobody else was around.
Yep. I tell everybody there's only 17 questions. Just find out the answers and internalize them so you know what to say when they ask them.
That's right.
All the buyers and sellers have all the same concerns.
All right, well, we're going to circle back later on and talk about some of those questions that we need to be asking when we're in a conversation with someone who's a prospect for us. But I want to come back to something that looks like you have a lot of agreement on here. So if analysis paralysis is one of the real causes of underperformance, I guess my 2-part question, A, in your experience, do you see agents that suffer from that come out of it? And then I guess the part B is what advice would you give someone to help them over the hump if they feel like they have to know everything, answer every question, have all the details nailed down? If that's how they're wired, if they're real conscientious and analytical, it's hard for people like that don't have all the info. So 1, do you see people get out of that paralysis? And then 2, what tips would you give?
I mean, I see People overcome it every day. I'm fortunate enough to work in a company that believes in self-mastery. Keller Williams teaches people how to learn about themselves on a behavioral profile level, so the DISC profile analysis, the AVA profile analysis. So what I've been able to do as a coach for our agents here in my business is to identify their DISC profiles, identify their behavioral characteristics, and then help coach them around that. You know, the high D is the person who's ready to go, go, go. They don't have that fear. Whereas the high C is the person who wants to analyze every single detail and look at every single metric before they go and make a single statement. And yet what we do is we teach them how to be stronger in each one of those suits and how to communicate with the other people of those different profiles. I myself am a DC, so I run with the brakes on. I'm wanting to go fast, but I want to know it all. So it's just, I think the answer is yes, I see people overcome it. Those people are tenacious. They don't take no for an answer. They're willing to learn. They're willing to master things on their self-internal level. And I think the second piece is, for the tip of advice to get through it, would be get into coaching. Whether it's with a mentor in your office or like a seasoned agent like myself or John or Kristin in your office, or join a team where they give you some of that mentorship or something along those lines, where you kind of get that incubation of, hey, you're a new guy, let me help you, let me educate you, let me get you through that and help you get your feet so that you can have that confidence.
You know, one thing that I did, sorry, Mike, one thing that I did when I first started, and it was, you know, I knew where I was lacking, and I think most people do. One of them was the finance end of it. So I grabbed a lender and I sat down with an amortization calculator, and I had him teach me. You know, how do I do this? How do you come up with those numbers on the HUD statement? I mean, those are two things that can build your confidence incredibly, especially working with buyers and if you're new, more than likely you're working with buyers first. To be able to whip out a calendar and say, or calculator and say, hey, here's your payment. And are we in the right range here? That kind of thing. That'll help build your confidence. And just piggybacking there on what Josh said, you know, finding a mentor. And if there's nobody in your office you're comfortable with, then go outside into the ancillary industries, whether it's title or lending or whatever, and hook up with one of those when you do your open houses. Have somebody there with you to help you build your confidence. But most important, don't try to change your personality. Be yourself. Just learn how to be your best self.
That's right, the best
and
you.
Realize when you're dealing with someone that's not you. You know, if you're a C, you know, or very analytical and you're dealing with a high D, realize who you're dealing with.
That's good. All right, John, let me direct this to you as the seasoned senator on the panel. If you were sitting down with maybe not a newbie, but someone that, you know, that's not super experienced, and they took you out for coffee, and they asked you, man, John, tell me the 2 things I need to do. I'm really serious about doubling my business over the next year. If you had to narrow it down to just a couple really strong pieces of advice, what would you say to them?
The first thing I would say to anybody is, on your first deal, you should get an assistant and focus on the things that are money-making activities and relationship-building activities. In 1997, I had a whole change in my career where I hired an assistant, and my production immediately doubled, then it doubled again, then it doubled again. And the idea that you should do paperwork and all the kind of things that you can do sitting at a desk, I call it inside work and outside work. And a lead agent, a top agent, should be doing all the outside work, you know, shaking hands, shaking and baking, and fussing the flesh with all the buyers and sellers and all the people you know, your sphere of influence. I'm on 4 or 5 different boards. I'm a member of Chamber of Commerce and tip clubs, and I'm out in the field all the time. As well as the other thing you do is you have to build your identity through your marketing. All marketing is, the purpose of that is to get your identity built. I can't go anywhere in Broome or Tioga County that people don't go, hey, I know you. You're the real estate guy, because over 30 years of one piece at a time, day by day, every week, I've had my picture in the classified section of the newspaper. How antiquated is that? But it's been there for 25 years straight.
What's a newspaper?
Yeah, what's a newspaper? But you still have people who say, hey, I do my crossword puzzle with you every morning. And all those things. I use billboards, I use marketing of all kinds, and it's all based upon your image, so they know who you are when you do run into them.
Well, so if I could jump in there, so the problem I find with that is that for a new agent, we talk about those things, that's money that they have to spend. Many of the agents who are coming into the business, they don't have that money, so they're looking for an answer of what they can do now. So for me, that conversation is a little different when that new agent comes to me. The very first thing I do with them, Mike, is I sit down with them and we do what we call a 411. And that's 4 weeks, 1 month, 1 year. And what we're going to do is we're going to identify what their 1-year goal is. So we're going to take that, we're going to chunk it down and say, what do you got to do over the next month to get there? And then from that 1 month, what do you have to do over the next 4 weeks to get there, right? So it allows them to chunk it down into bite-sized so that you eat the elephant one bite at a time, right?
Absolutely.
And what we'll do then is we've identified their big why. And the guys will come to us and say, well, I want to make money, I want to make a lot of money. Well, that's too ambiguous, that's too vague. We want to get them very specific because, you know, the SMART acronym, it's got to be specific, measurable, you know, all that stuff. So we want to get them very specific, but not just because of an acronym, but because it ties them to their heart. And if we don't identify their big why, we're not going to be able to help them attach that to the activities that they have to do. Okay, so we've talked about the fear of rejection and the analysis paralysis. And the key there is if their big why isn't big enough for them to overcome that, the answer to your previous question where you said, do people overcome that, the answer will be a resounding no. Right. However, if you tie their activities to their goals, the answer will always be yes. So the first thing I do with those new agents is I sit them down, we do a 411, we review their goals, we talk about their goals, and then I say, so Mike, do you see how by calling 20 people a day in your database in your sphere, that you don't have to spend any money and you can actually wind up with 36 transactions closed in your first year? Oh yeah, I could do that. So then you chunk it down and you make it real simple for them. And so for us, it's about getting them engaged, getting them into productivity, getting them in prospecting, and doing so, it's about getting them a coach, getting them tied to their big whys, and getting them focused on the activities they've got to do, like John mentioned.
All right, Kristin, why don't you respond to these guys? I'm sure you got.
No, all that is so true, and it's very sales-oriented training. Of which I've never really responded very well to, and I'm sure there's got to be someone in the audience that is relating to me on that. What I've done, and I'll just give you some perspective, and I'll make it short. You know, most of my career was in Orlando, and then I moved into a new area 6 years ago, and I knew one person, my husband, and he wasn't buying any real estate. So I started from scratch, and I mean, I had a great business, 20-something years. So how did I do it? I literally hit the pavement. You know, I started doing open houses for people in my office that had listings. I strategically chose those listings. You know, high traffic areas, no gated communities, priced well. I went and had my own signs made because you are you Inc.
That's right.
No matter who you
Right.
And so my name, my phone number, and the agents advertised their listing, their open house. I didn't have to pay for that. And I did that 3 or 4 times a week. I had immediate business. Within 30 days, I have a scheduled closing. Things start rolling. And then back to what John says, you know, I started working it one at a time. 5.5 years later, I have a very good business because I focused on every single day. I didn't focus on the goal because that freaks my mind out. You know, I just don't deal with that well. So I focused on the everyday aspects of what I need to do today, and I would do it. And then tomorrow, and I would do it. And you'd be surprised how well that works.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, I cannot tell you guys what a pleasure this is to listen to you talk and hear you guys share. I'm going to throw away some of my scripted questions and pick up on a couple things that I've already heard you guys share in this last segment. And I'm going to go to something that John mentioned in his last response. I was going to get to this later, but I want to get to it now. Let's talk about the calendar, okay? In my practice, and this is, I'm going to let my little dirty secret out right now, okay? I do a lot of consulting, and I get paid a lot of money to go into big companies and little companies. And at the end of the day, whether I'm there a day, an hour, a week, months, I usually end up sitting down with a senior executive and saying, I've discovered a big part of the problem. A big part of the problem is the people you have in charge of selling stuff don't spend enough time selling stuff. And I always make sure I get paid before I give them that stupid simple, right? But you guys know exactly where I'm going with this. I want to hear from you 3 top producers. How do you control your calendar? How much control do you exercise over your calendar? How do you plan, manage your time block? And then I want to come back and circle after that and talk about high-value activities and spending the time on money-making activities versus admin and minutia. But let's start with How do you control your calendar? That's everything to me.
Okay, I'll go ahead and start because I know Josh has the big kaboom at the end. But what I do at the beginning of the year, whenever I'm doing, I actually do a planning twice a year. But when I'm doing my planning, you know, I use Outlook and I basically schedule everything as a reoccurrence. So follow up with sellers, follow up with buyers. It's very generic, but it's the same thing every week. And then I have blocks for myself. I highly suggest you do this, that you save time for yourself, whether it's in the morning or whatever you do. I used to try to do an hour. It never worked, so I'm up to 15 minutes. And I spend that with me, myself, my God, you know, exercise, doing whatever I got to do. You have to have your mind straight. And then I go to work in the morning, and I'm on the internet for 2 hours, and I get a lot done before anybody's shown up for work. So all day, then I'm just getting the return emails and stuff, and I'm actually working on money-producing things. But the reoccurrence on any kind of calendar really works for me.
John?
Oh, I'm the odd man out since I don't time block anything and never have. I've always been operating on what I would call, if you look at my real estate card, it says instant service. So when people call me, I say, oh, really? I can meet you at the house in 10 minutes. You want to meet me there? So I work on the first to it gets it plan. And I do have assistants who do the inside work, which frees my calendar up every day. So I don't time block anything. I simply take the call and they say, if you want to list your house, John, I want you to sell my house. I say, great. How about 1 o'clock or is 2 o'clock better? Not next week. And there's that old story about the guy camping out with his buddy and the bear comes over the hill. And one guy takes off running away from the bear. The other guy sits down, puts on his sneakers. He says, what are you doing? He says, you can't outrun that bear. And you say, I don't have to. I just got to outrun you. So I've always operated under that pretense. First to it gets it. And it's been very successful for me. But, of course, it requires a competent and wonderful backup team behind you, starting with my wonderful wife who picks all the pieces up on all my family and my grandkids and all that stuff. She operates the family life, and then my other people operate the paperwork business side of the life, the inside. So that's what I've done for 30 years.
So I think, you know, we kind of see some synonyms between the two conversations, and for me it's about mindset. For John, he doesn't follow a calendar, but he's got the mindset that he's going to get there first. So that is his calendar, even though it's a mental calendar.
That's right.
You know, for Kristin, she follows a calendar that she goes and she sets up twice a year. For myself, I kind of set up my calendar each week. We do a planning. My wife and I, we sit and do our calendar together, which was a strategy that came up from our coach. So again, another theme coming from the past that I just talked about was the importance of having a good coach. Is we sit down and so I kind of try and get this thing here on the screen if we can. And I don't know how close you can see it, but you can see that we time block at a high level. So all of the orange stuff is stuff that we have to do on a personal level. For instance, get the children ready for school, get them delivered to school. We have a 3- and 4-year-old child. And unfortunately, the business doesn't care if you have kids or not, right? So we have to time block that because otherwise you're going to still be trying to do business during those times. We have to pick up our children from school each day at a certain time. We highlight the lead generation, which you'll see the lead gen is a big piece is in green. So you can kind of see there the times that we have in green. And then we schedule personal time for me in blue, and I think personal time for my wife on her calendar is pink. I mean, that's I'm a boy, blue. You know, so anyway, we just kind of calendar our stuff and make it super simple. I keep everything in the time block. That way I know when my appointments are available. So if Mike calls me and says, hey, Josh, I want you to look at selling my house, I say, that's great, Mike. Today's Thursday the 21st. I'm busy until 3:15. I've got 3:30 or 4:30. Which works best for you? And so that gives me the opportunity to be in control of my calendar. And if they say no, guess what? Sometimes we just can't do it, right? Or we have to move it to the following day for the time block.
So let me stop you there, Josh.
Yeah.
I heard a best practice from each of you I want to reemphasize for our listeners here today. I heard Kristin say that she owns the morning, and I'm going to circle back to that in a second. And I heard John say that speed saves lives, speed gets deals, he's available. And I heard you say you really own your calendar and you block out time selfishly guarding especially your lead gen time. So I think for our audience, those are 3 real gems. Kristin, I want to ask you about the morning thing. I did a study about a year ago for a client. We started talking about the morning, and I started realizing how many top producers really had a different looking morning than most people today. And so I went and did a bunch of research, and at the end of the day, what I discovered was that almost every highly successful person who publishes what they do in the morning does almost exactly the same thing. And one of the things they don't do is check their email. They don't roll out of bed and grab their phone and let the world dictate how they're going to spend their time. They get up really early, and they do those things. They nourish their mind, their soul, their body. They eat right. They work on their goals. They read some content. And then, let's say maybe they do that between 5:30 and 8. Then they get into email, kind of what you talked about. Just talk a little bit more about your philosophy of the morning, and then I would like to hear from the other guys, what do you do to get to a great start for the day? So you're in control, you're energized, your mind is right, your attitude's good. What are you doing for that?
It is so important, and I wish I had been doing this my whole career, honestly, because I went through a lot of stress and a lot of unnecessary pain and anguish, worrying about deals and things like that through the years. It was really unnecessary, and you create that in your own mind, really. I read the same research that you did, and it finally kicked in. I had please don't take offense to this, anybody, but I had a friend that gave me an Indian name, Slow Learner, because it takes me a while for it to sink in through all this hair and everything. And so long story short is I started this practice a few years ago, and I wake up at 4:30 in the morning, and it was hard for me not to look at my phone and my emails and everything, but I don't do that anymore. Personally, I spend time reading some type of Bible verses and everything, and I don't do that for a whole hour or what. I just do it enough to get me started straight. And then the priority is my health. I've had a few deaths in the family that really scared me, so I started thinking of, you do that when you get older. And so I really started focusing on the health. And I'm telling you, it makes a world of difference when you work in this business, because it's highly stressful. At least it is to me, because I wear everything on my shoulders. I care about people and what's happening. So you have to be strong mentally. You have to have it together up here. Then you can focus when you sit down with that email, and then I do the email stuff, and I enjoy the heck out of being way ahead of people. I'm already asking about the HUD. I'm already enlightening buyers as to new listings or whatever. I'm doing that probably before they're even rolling out of bed. And that way, my day starting at 9 o'clock, when I'm ready to go out and do what I've got to do, these people are starting to respond to me, and I can react like John does. Okay, let's go see that property in another hour, because I've already gotten the minutia out of the way. And it works for me. If you're a morning person, try it.
And if you're not a morning person, Hal Elrod wrote a great book called The Morning Miracle, and it just gives you some practices to follow and to sample. And much like Kristin's done, I do the same thing, right? I kind of go through that same practice. I get up in the morning. They teach us that you need to have loved, lifted, ate, and prayed, prior to getting your day started. So for me, I give my kids every morning a hug and a kiss, and we get them ready for school. So that fills my heart. And so then I'm supposed to do exercise. Some mornings I do, some mornings I don't. I usually do that in the evenings, actually, myself. But many of my high-producing agents, we focus on getting them in that ritual of working out in the morning so that their day is, upbeat from there. I personally subscribe to a couple of things. Simon Sinek is a really awesome leader. He provides a simple daily email quote that helps me get focused on my leadership ability. John Maxwell, who's an awesome author, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, stuff like that, talks about the law of the lid and how anyone who you lead can only be as great as you are. So I get his daily memo. I focus on that once a day in the morning. And then also I get a Joel Osteen prayer. So I do the Joel Osteen morning prayer. So for me, I get fulfilled on the mental and spiritual and loving side. So that rest of my day, when I have those frogs come up, oh, this home didn't appraise out, oh, this home inspection revealed black mold, oh no, right? I've had my day fulfilled. Those other frogs that come up, they're not that hard to kiss anymore, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of how I focus my mornings.
Beautiful. A long time ago, I read some motivational books, and everyone said that all the money's made before 9 o'clock, which is kind of what we're saying, because if you do the things that are important to you in the morning, I get up at 5 or 6 o'clock every morning, and no matter what you do, you always get those distractions out of the way, so that when 8 or 9 o'clock comes along, you're ready to go, because you already accomplished and overcome the lingering things from the day before, or you've got them organized to take care of that day. But I think in our board of realtors, I know everybody, and the top producers are all early risers. You'd be surprised how many of them, you see the emails come through, text messages come through at 5:45, something going on with the deal, you text them back, they text you right back. All the top producers get up early.
Well, I would say that aligns with the data I've seen, and I love that you guys shared that. I didn't intend to go down that path, but I appreciate you, Kristin, bringing that up. Let me ask you guys one more question on this kind of productivity track, and then I'm going to radically change gears, and we're going to talk about sales technique and sales process. But let's just stick with productivity one more minute. What are your biggest time drains? What are the things that just suck your time like a Dracula away from you, and what do you do about it? And then do any of you have like a favorite productivity hack, whether it's an app? I know John obviously has a team and at least one assistant. So what are the time drains, and then do you have a fix or a hack or an app that you use that you'd love to share with everybody else?
I think the two time sucks for me would be email and Facebook. I have a lot of social media marketing that we complete. If I get onto social media and my intention is to make a post about something we've sold or we're listing and I don't get right off, oh boy, look out. I'm watching cat videos and ice bucket challenges and all this other rad stuff. So for me, I would say that that's one. And then I think the other one would be email, right? Is like you mentioned, that becomes reactive when we get an email and it's like I said, the inspection went awry or the appraisal didn't come out or whatever the case may be. You're then in a reactive mode instead of owning your calendar and being proactive and doing your money-making activities. So those are the two biggest time sucks. What I find that I do is when I'm in my prospecting, I do it from my cell phone typically, and I have an app on my phone that states something to the effect, and it's called Auto SMS, and I have an Android, so it's called Auto SMS. And I have just a real quick autoresponder on there that says something to the effect of, hey, thanks for calling. I'm sorry I missed you. I'm with another client. If you need me right away, here's my text and email. And that way they can text and email me. And then I do a lead follow-up for an hour after every day of our lead generation. So then I get back to those folks. So that's kind of one of the hacks that I use to try and stay focused and purposeful so that I can stay focused on my lead gen time and then also still get back to those folks in a timely manner.
Nice. John?
Time sucks because I live every day just enjoying every minute. I don't look at anything as a, the only thing I could say is perhaps Netflix when you get into House of Cards or something, but that's for later at night to fall asleep to. But I consider everything I do to be advertising, so whether if I'm talking to people or going somewhere or I'm talking on the phone with people, I don't consider anything a waste of time. I try to turn that either toward a relationship or some sort of path down the becoming friends with people, which leads to more deals.
You have one of the most unique and positive outlooks on life. I don't agree with you 100%, but man, I love you.
I've always said if everybody was like me, it'd be a weird world.
Yeah. Kristin, what about you? What are your time drains, and then what are your little productivity hacks that get you over the hump?
I'm kind of on the line with John there. I really couldn't think of a true time drain. For me, it's more when a closing takes longer than it should have, or an inspection's taking longer because one guy instead of 3 guys showed up. Yeah. It's just aggravations to me. But that stuff you just have to deal with. But on the other note, what Josh was saying, and John, just responding to people pretty quickly, and you have to find your own niche and how it works for you. That's the great thing about real estate, is you can create your own business. It's again, you can do it the way it works for you, and that's what I do.
Yeah, man, I love the You Inc. thing. That's one of my takeaways from this session for sure. Yeah, all right, as promised, changing gears. I'm going to dive into one of my favorite topics. I probably spend as much time on this with clients as anything. It would be telling your sales story. So as it relates to your unique message, how you articulate value, how you get a prospect's attention and get them to invite you in for further dialogue, I'd like you all to share how do you get your unique message across. And I don't, whether it's on Facebook or whether it's on the phone in a call, or whether it's over coffee, or you're talking to a potential referral source, what is your messaging? How do you communicate the value you bring and what you do for clients? And then I'll circle back with some of my own thoughts after I hear from you guys.
So one of the things we're always telling agents to do in that new agent consult, right, is where we're trying to tell them to identify what's their USP, their unique selling proposition. And part of that is to help them identify what's going to set them apart from myself or Kristin or John. And so for my team and I, we've identified after starting your book that we don't tell the story as well as we should, and therefore we're changing some of that. So thank you for what you've provided us here as a template to go from. That being said, we are learning to always be growing in that area. And I have an 89-point marketing plan that kind of talks about the things we do before we get the listing, as results in advance, all the way through after the sale, the things we offer for them. And when you really start to itemize out the things we do as realtors and what we do for our clients in a fiduciary manner, you can get really granular, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on in a transaction. And so we've just started sharing that data with our clients, whether it's through a blog post or whether it's through providing them copies of the unique selling proposition with the CMA. We're marketing about, who do you have that has an 89-point marketing plan, and who do you think could beat that? So we're kind of going after that now. I think that that's really an area that I desire to improve on, is the sharing of our story. So we've actually started blogging now after we sell a property, blogging the story of how that seller came to hire us and what successes we were able to help them achieve. For instance, we had a gentleman who came to us a year ago, couldn't sell, wasn't in an equitable position. A year later, by taking some of our repair, we told him some repairs to complete, some staging to complete. He was able to not only sell, be in an equitable position, but we got him over market value in 5 days on the market, was able to pay off his mortgage, additional debt, and put cash in his pocket. So that's a great blog for us to post and tell our story, and we would not have done that previously prior to reading your book. So
yeah, and the power as you share the story was not what you did, but what you achieved for your client.
Correct, absolutely.
What their result was, and I'll come back to that. I want to hear from the other panelists. How do you get your message across? What are your strong talking points? How do you get someone's attention? How do you differentiate yourself from everybody else out there?
I think you guys just made a really good point, and I want to make a point to the listeners out there that, you might not have the experience that we have, so you've got to come up with your own angle. And one of the ways that you can do that is by telling stories. And that's what I typically do. I'm very blessed right now in my business that the referrals are really, that's how I'm getting my business. And so that's half the battle right there. But still, when I sit in front of people, I do talk about, my experience. And most people have heard of a horrible real estate transaction of some sort, and then so I explain to them, well, this is how it can be avoided by using someone like myself that has this experience, and I'll refer either to the appraisal side or the lending side or whatever, and that draws them in. And I'm also comfortable in my own skin, and I just want to encourage that if you're not comfortable in your own skin, get the coach, do whatever you got to do. But be comfortable in your own skin, because that comes across to people. If you're fine with yourself and then you begin to tell the story, they become fine with you. If you're trying to sell them, that's a whole other story. Nobody likes to be sold.
Yeah, I think if I could just touch on that real quick, is we don't try and sell anything. We want to position ourselves as the real estate consultant by asking great questions. So if Mike calls me to sell his home and he says, hey, I want to list it for $250,000, well, what's important about that number to you? Well, that's what I paid for it. Okay, great. So, and then we just keep going, right? And we just keep asking questions.
Josh, hold that thought. We're going to come back to structuring the conversation, because there are still times when I think we need to talk before we question. I'm all about questioning more. We'll get to that. But sure. Let me hear from John real quick. John, what are some of the powerful talking points you use to get someone to put their guard down or trust you or realize you're in this for them? What do you communicate?
I'll tell you exactly how I do it. Tell me if you can see this. I go like this. I go, Mike, this is your house. And Mike, this is your life. I care a lot more about your life than I do your house. Mike, tell me your story so I can help you. And then I proceed from there to guide them through what's best in their life to the end of the transaction. There's many, many times I've decided or talked to people and said, look, you really shouldn't buy this house. You really shouldn't sell your house. Maybe you should do this instead, because your life will be better. Because I only have one mission, is to make their life better. Wow. And that's the overriding why. when I get up in the morning. That's why I get up.
I love that.
I love it. I love your life purpose. I love how caring you are, and that you get that it's not about you, it's about them, and how that pays off in spades in business. But that's not even really always the motivation. If you do the right thing, it comes back. So let me just talk for a minute about the sales story, and then I'm curious for your guys' take on this. This is a topic where I spend a lot of time, because most people in any sales role or even marketing roles tend to have pretty pathetic stories when it comes to talk. They spend all their time talking about what they do, but not what they achieve for their customers or their clients. And the way it would play out in my business, if someone said, Mike, what do you do? You know, my natural reaction would be to say, oh, I consult, I coach, I speak, I have a best-selling book. But the truth is, so what? No one cares that I coach, I consult, I speak, just like no one cares that you sell real estate or you help someone sell a home. So what I've created is this little thing in my book, and this is probably the single most thing I get asked about is framing and sharpening the story. Is I would argue the most important part of our story, where the power comes from, is when we talk about the issues that we address for our clients, their pains, their fears, their problems on the negative side, and on the positive side, their opportunities and the new and better results we achieve for them. So my strongest coaching to prevent the pathetic, self-focused, I do this, we're so great, I've been in business 20 years, we have the largest firm, all those things that salespeople like to say, and those things are important, but they don't get someone's attention, and they're also very self-focused. Is there a way that you could early on in the conversation, or in email, or in your LinkedIn profile, list out the reasons other clients come to you? And I think you all touched on this in one way or another. I think John started out one way, and then Kristin had the point of telling the story of what you've achieved for other clients. So the tip I would throw out is, if you could start your sales story with something like this: homeowners look to me when, right? Or I help homeowners who are looking to. If you started out with one of those two lines, anything you say next will be awesome, because you can't talk about yourself and what you do. You can only talk at that point about what you achieve for your clients. So I'm just curious for your reaction. How do you guys do that now to show them it's not about you and what you do, it's about them, their results, overcoming their fears, etc.?
That goes for me to the consultative piece, where we're asking those questions. My listing presentation has nothing to do with me. It talks about them, their home, their goals, etc. We do a pre-listing package that we send out in advance that kind of talks about us, because when we get there and we're face-to-face, I don't want to spend any time talking about me. I want to spend time getting to know them, and like John said, their story, and I love that visual. I'm going to probably have to steal that from you, John, so thank you for that.
You're more than welcome to have it.
Yeah, so that was fantastic. But so when we get there, we don't want to talk about us. By then, if they've decided to interview us, we feel like they've got enough data about us. Let's talk about them. So for us, it's about asking as many questions as possible. And what we teach in the sales that we do is the difference between logic and emotion. We want to get them to an emotional conversation, as opposed to like you telling me that, hey, I paid $250,000 for the home, that's why I want it. Well, that's logic. That really doesn't help. When we get to the fact that, well, I have to pay off a $235,000 mortgage so that I can go and be in New York with my grandkids, well, now that's about emotion. So now we have the opportunity to talk about something that's important to you, which is your grandkids. We want to help you achieve that goal of getting there to be with your grandkids. So I think that's where we go, is we go to the consultative questioning and seek to get to something that's important to their heart so we can help them.
Okay, so let's go further down that path. Let's talk about the sales call. Okay, it's the conversation. It could be on the phone, or it could be you've gotten past the phone and you're sitting face to face, and you're now with a prospective. And in this case, let's make it a homeowner. You're trying to get the listing, but frankly, it could be a conversation with a buyer you're trying to bring on board that you're going to help buy a home. I want to hear from all of you. What are your philosophies of structuring and conducting that sales call, that sales conversation? Do you have a certain flow? I hear a lot of consultative things coming out. We have to ask good questions. I'd like to hear, what is your recommendation of how that conversation should be structured?
Well, I'll go ahead and jump in. I mean, again, I'm very, it just depends on the situation, and every situation is a little bit different. I'll just start off with buyers. First of all, I always meet with the buyer. Try to meet them face-to-face. Usually they're calling, they want to see something. So I'll go out and meet with them. But in that conversation, by the end of the conversation, I have found out, how they plan on paying for a house, if they're qualified or not. I mean, I've got those questions in my head, so I've been able to work down through a conversation, are they currently working? How long have they been there? How long have they been in that industry? That type of thing. So I get the feel if they're qualified or not. And then I begin interweaving my experience into that, just based on how the conversation goes, to make them feel comfortable with the fact that, I'm able to assist them to make sure that they're not going to make a bad decision, an unaffordable decision on a house or something to that effect. And on the selling side, again, it's back to, what Josh was saying about asking questions, but typically you'll find out a fear, I need to sell my house in 30 days. I mean, I can't wait any longer, that kind of thing. Well, it might help you to know that I've had listings before where I've gotten pre-qualification letters where, because of my experience, I've been able to read them and notate that that particular loan can't be done that way. And so I'm not going to take your house off the market and hold it hostage for 30 days just to find out those people can't close. My experience is going to help us, knock that out of the park right up front. So verbally interweaving the experience through the conversation.
Okay, John, how do you structure a sales call? You got a phone call, you ran over to meet someone at a coffee shop or wherever, and you're now sitting down. Talk us through the phases of that conversation.
I talk about a buyer or seller side because it's very different on each one. On a seller side, I do the thing about how to care about their life more than I do their house. And once I find out what their goal is, then I spend time educating them on the specific elements of what really takes to sell houses. I give them statistics. I give them the 4 elements of the sale. I show them all the aspects about it. I'll tell you something that I learned from Roger. I can't remember his last name. Roger, the old Realtor.com guy. He says there's data out there, then data, you can collect it and it becomes information, and then information together becomes knowledge. And once you have knowledge plus stripes on your back, that's called wisdom. And you're paying me for wisdom. But the data, information, and knowledge is always all out there in the internet. Now more than ever. Back when I started, and we carried the books around, we were harbingers of the information, but no longer. Now the buyers know more about the sellers than anybody. The only thing they don't know is, what grandma's age is they're going to go visit when they go sell their house. So it's the wisdom that the people are paying us for. So you have to lead them through the information and the marketing elements so they can make an intelligent business decision at the end. And when you do that, you gain the trust. And if you're going to get the listing, then they have to trust you to be the guy that knows what he's talking about. Because when it all comes down to the end, they turn to you and say, hey, John, what do you think? You have to be able to give them the 2 options. Well, if you do this, you might get that. If you do that, you might get this, without making the business decision for them.
Okay, so let me jump in and ask a clarifying question before we switch over to Josh for his answer. I want to hear all 3 of you answer this question. What percent, let's say you're sitting down with someone for coffee to try to get their listing, what percent of the time in that sales call, ideally, do you want to be talking and presenting versus what percent of the time are you questioning and getting information and insight? What does an ideal conversation look like? What's the percentages?
Well, so I always say that if I have to take a sip of my glass of water, I spoke too much. I want to ask as many questions as possible. So much so that probably 70-30, 80-20, where they're communicating on the high level and I'm just sitting back collecting data. And the analogy I always give, because people can relate to this even if they're a brand new agent, is when you go to a doctor's office. If you go in with a headache and you just say, hey, I have a headache, and he doesn't ask you any questions or do anything but other than say, hey, here, Josh, take these 2 aspirin, well, we could be up, some malpractice suits, right? If he keeps asking me questions and find out that I've also got vertigo, etc., he finds out I got a brain aneurysm and now I have to go in for emergency medical surgery, he did his job. So that's kind of the way we try and teach our agents to do the same thing, and myself included, is we want to ask as many questions as possible. So we have scripts and dialogues that we practice. We've got a buyer's lead sheet and a seller's lead sheet, and we call those our buyer and seller success appointments. And when we get there, like I said, we don't want to talk about ourselves. We want to go in and ask them as many questions as possible. Take the clipboard and a blank sheet of paper, as well as any notes that we need. The first item is to build rapport, and then go through the consultative questions.
Love it. Great. That was prescriptive, helpful, valuable. What about Kristin, John? What's the percent of time? And since Josh went and expanded, let me ask you to. I want to hear Kristin and John both answer this. Give us your 1 or 2 favorite questions that you think are unique that you love to ask a potential client.
Go ahead, John.
The best question is this: what's the most important to you? What's important to you? Is getting to South Carolina where your grandchildren are more important? Is overcoming the mortgage that you owe more important? And we try to emphasize that life is not necessarily always about the money. Not that money's not important, because it is. But for most people, the emotional thing is a lot more than just the money.
Good. All right, Kristin, what percent of the time do you want to be talking versus listening? And what are your 1 or 2 favorite questions to ask?
Well, the first thing that came to my mind was the 80-20 rule. You definitely want to be asking the open-ended questions like we've all learned, and let them talk as much as possible. And you become a 2-year-old, and you can just keep saying, why? What else?
Tell me more.
Yeah, tell me more. And I really can't think of a favorite question, because I really do. I'm like a little chameleon. It's just different on every single transaction. I just sat with a couple the other day who he has dementia, and so they're selling their property, and what I thought was going to be about an hour meeting ended up being a 3-hour meeting, and it was fine, and I just followed the flow of the conversation, and so I don't know that I have a favorite question. I would just say that I keep the conversation rolling and get it back on track towards listing the property or whatever you're doing at that point.
Fantastic. Okay, we have a heads up. This has gone really fast. We've got just 5 minutes left. I'm gonna you guys 1 more question, and I need kind of brief answers. And then I'm gonna get you to make a closing argument, and then we'll thank American Equity and move on. But this is a really important question, and this ties into the next episode in the AEM Achieve series. Just real quickly, social selling. It's a big buzz, right? You guys are all using social media in one way or another. It's a big topic. 30 seconds each. What are you doing now, social media-wise, to either acquire business, to promote your business, to get your story out? What platforms are you using? What are you doing? Go.
Well, no, I'll start off real quick. The first thing I did was I came up with a complete marketing plan where all my marketing materials are the same. I came up with my own personal logo. So my Facebook, my Twitter, everything looks the same. My web page, it's all conducive. And I Facebook, I tweet, and I have my own website, not a company website. Those are the 3 things I do.
So your brand is real important, your own personal brand.
My own personal brand has always been very, very important. Again, you Inc. Your company is important, don't get me wrong, but you are you, and you are in business for yourself, and the sooner you realize that, the more serious I think you'll take your career.
All right, Kristin, in 10 seconds, what are you doing on Facebook specifically?
I have my own Facebook page. I post listings. I only encourage on my business page really relationships with my customers, and I keep it business oriented.
Okay, Josh, quickly.
A ton of Facebook. We do our home value. We do the landing page. Click here for your home value. So that's been a pretty good success for us. And we do a ton of business pages for different things, whether it's foreclosure tours, short sales, etc. They're very targeted. So very niche, very targeted Facebook business media.
Okay, great.
I'm gonna make you all laugh. I don't do anything.
I knew
I'm going to
say that even before you said it.
Actually,
it's getting more complicated as we go, right, John?
Well, the other thing I will say is our company here, we've just hired a full-time person to operate all of that for all of our agents, because it's just mind-boggling for us seasoned fellows, but it's essential for the future. My son does a lot. He's my broker, and his generation, of course, is involved with that. They're on Facebook all the time.
Yeah, I love the diversity of experience, perspectives, geography. Everything we got on this panel has been really a blessing. This has been really cool to hear from you guys. So can I ask you all, just take about 30 seconds or so each, can you make a closing argument for us? What's the one takeaway you would love the listeners today to leave with from the things we shared? Or maybe there's something you didn't get to say because I didn't ask the right question. Just take 30 seconds, drive home your point, and then I'll wrap us up.
I'll start off.
Ladies first.
Oh, sorry, John, go ahead.
No, ladies first.
Okay. just two quick things. One thing that really helped boost my career in the beginning was that I created you all have heard of the columns. You have a column here and a column here and a column here for creating wealth and so forth. One of the columns I created in business was having a core group, which had a financial planner, an attorney, a clothier, people not in your business necessarily, no title people. You could have a mortgage person, of course. But we met once a month, very early in the morning, once again, for coffee and just discuss business, not to trade leads like the chamber or anything. That was a wonderful group. I learned a lot over the years. And I would encourage you to start something like that on your own. Choose the people that you want to work with and systemize your business. That's it.
Thank you.
So I'll jump in. I think that the biggest thing for me is to teach agents the 3 L's of real estate: leads, listings, leverage. And that's the Millionaire Real Estate Agent topic. And it just, for me, it's get your mind right, generate leads, go list properties, and then get an assistant like John mentioned. So for new agents, if this is a target for a new agent, I would say the first piece is getting your mind right, getting your time block, identifying your goals, arm yourself with the words to go into battle. Like John mentioned, it's knowing what to say and when to say it. So
awesome. All right, Senior Senator in New York, give us your 30-second closing argument.
I find it very interesting, Mike, and I know you did not plan this ahead of time, but the 3 people that you ended up with on this call are all believers. And I operate from a biblical principle, which is Micah 6:8. For those of you who know the scripture, basically it says, do justly, which is to do the right thing, be forgiving, because it's good for you, and walk humbly with your God, because there is a God and you're not him. So it's funny that all 3 of us, I believe, from what you've said, are believers, and we operate from a servant's heart, which means we care more about the other person than we do ourselves, and we walk it as Christ is our example.
Man, I thank you guys for your transparency, for sharing your hearts, your minds, your best practices, and let me throw a big thank you to my friends at American Equity Mortgage, and I'll share this with them. They control 99% of the loans they do. They originate them. They close them. They've been doing this for 22 years. They're a wonderful partner to real estate agents. I know many who use them. If you need a if you need a loan officer, if you're an agent, you need a loan officer that actually knows how to read a SIP and can return a phone call and get a loan closed on time, I would encourage you to check out my friends over at American Equity. And here's a little pitch for the next session, which will be next month. It's going to be on social media, and the date is September 25th, and the AEM Achieve will be focused on how to present and sell yourself on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, or anything like that. 2 p.m. Eastern, same time. Will be a great guest, and you get a lot of value. September 25th. Thank you, panelists. My dear friend Miles Austin of FillTheFunnel.com. Thank you for making this work behind the scenes so I could focus on the panelists, and I wish you all great selling. Thank you all.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.